When trying to bring about significant change, when is aggression and violence a better option than assertiveness, strong arguments, and modelling the behaviour you expect of others?
This was the question asked of ABC panelists during a Q&A segment in, I believe, Australia. It caught my eye at first due to the text of the tweet attached to this 5-minute segment posted to Twitter by ABC Q&A. What's ABC Q&A, you ask? It's a hashtag that gives the viewer a chance to ask questions, challenge power, and share views, tweeting other people's opinions to inspire questions, not express our own views. Attached to this hashtag was the following tweet, quote, "Can aggression and violence be a better option than assertiveness and strong arguments to effect change?"
Ashton?
When none of that other stuff works.
It's as simple as that?
Yep.
Let the demonetization process begin!
I have a great answer for this that a lot of people do not like. I want patriarchy to fear feminism.
This is Mona Etawi, American-Egyptian freelance journalist. American-Egyptian journalist, obviously.
And there is a chapter in my book on violence.
By the way, guys, she's a published author, don't you know? That's very important for you to know in this discussion on if and when and how it's acceptable to use violence to achieve political ends. It's very important that you know. She writes books, guys.
There's a chapter on my book about white women who voted for Trump and white women who accept crumbs from patriarchy because they allow their whiteness to trump their gender.
How very odd that that is the analysis she's come up with about white women who voted for Trump, given I'm almost certain that she is neither a white woman, nor did she actually have any inclination to vote for the God Emperor Trump in the last presidential election. I mean, not with that hair color she didn't. We all know what vibrant hair color telegraphs to the masses. Don't we side of YouTube that refuses to differentiate style from politics?
I'm fully aware of this. But at the end of the day, even those white women have to recognize that nothing protects them from patriarchy.
Except maybe, I don't know, the United States Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. And then, of course, there's always the 19th Amendment, which everyone just willfully forgets. Both of those two things. Of course, we're in Australia, I believe, not the United States, so it might be a little bit different. I'm not as familiar with Australian politics as I am with United States politics, but you know what? We'll get there eventually. It's fine. But you know what? Hang on. Let's say for the sake of the argument, maybe the United States was simply just being ironic. Maybe the government didn't really mean to make it equal for everybody in the eyes of the law. JK, we actually don't want gender parity at the voting booths nor in the workplace.
Nothing. For me, as a feminist, the most important thing is to destroy patriarchy.
Like I said, guys, she is a freelance journalist, first and foremost, above anything else. Can't you tell?
And all of this talk about how if you talk about violence, you're just becoming like the men.
Who in the gosh darn diddly hootin' tootin' world ever did say such nonsense? Oh.
My question, so your question is a really important one, but I'm going to answer it with another question.
You're not actually answering the question then, are ya?
How long must we wait for men and boys to stop murdering us, to stop beating us, and to stop raping us?
Murdering, raping, beating. I don't know about the Australian crime statistics, but it's funny because on 2 counts, at least in the United States, murder and being beaten, for instance, males experience higher victimization rates than females for all types of violent crime except for rape, sexual assault. Most murder victims were actually male, 78% in 2007, according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which you can find linked in the description down below. Do you want to know what that same organization actually has defined as rape? Forced sexual intercourse, including both psychological coercion as well as physical force. Forced sexual intercourse means penetration by the offenders. Includes attempted rape, male as well as female victims, and both heterosexual and same-sex rape. Notice that this definition does not include forced to penetrate or made to penetrate, which means that male victims of female offenders are not included within the purview of any statistical analysis done regarding rape. Isn't that just a hoot? It's always a fun little tidbit to include in a discussion about the patriarchy, don't you agree, ladies?
How many rapists must we kill?
Well, I don't know. How many can you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt in a court of law are guilty of such a heinous crime? Mona.
Not the state, because I disagree with the death penalty, and I want to get rid of incarceration.
Did you hear that little golden nugget of opinion on the internet.com? Let me play it back for you.
How many rapists must we kill? Not the state, because I disagree with the death penalty, and I want to get rid of incarceration.
Not the state. I disagree with the death penalty, but let's just kill all the rapists. But not the state. We, as feminists, as a collective, gotta take that shit into our own hands. Hashtag resistance. Am I right, ladies? Am I right? just an average Tuesday after your 3 p.m. hair dyeing appointment, we check the hashtag #MeToo for any recent allegations and then hang a guy from a tree until dead as a message to all other non-charged and proven guilty by the state rapists within our nation's borders. Why don't we?
And I'm with you on the police. So I want women themselves. As a woman, I'm asking, how many rapists must we kill until men stop raping us?
Excellent question, Mona. It is rather unfortunate that the only correct answer, at least in the way that you framed it, is all of them. As you know, and I know, there can never be any certainty beyond leaving every single newborn male to die in the woods alone and exposed to the elements after having massacred the world's population of dippin' sticks, males, I'm talking about you, prior if you want to ensure that no male ever rapes again. And that is ensure. Because that's the only way to go about doing that.
So, Mona, them's fighting words. Spectator Australia is already saying Mona's promoting violence.
People commit crimes every day despite the laws, despite incarceration, Mona. So what you're really advocating for here is a mass male genocide, and I'm not cool with it. Brah. Yes, that is exactly what she's doing here. And she does it with much the composure of a complete nutcase, who's convinced themselves that they are not a nutcase, but in fact are a nutcase. Clinically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm saying that violence has been owned by the state. That violence has been given by the state to its police. That violence has been allowed to continue, unchecked mostly, by men, especially privileged men.
Oh my, I guess we'll just ignore any violent offender incarceration rates then too, since we're being willfully ignorant of the facts and making up things as we go along. Mona?
So exactly how long do I have to wait to be safe?
Okay,
And when I
let me
say
ask
to
Murray-
be safe,
Murray,
there's
what
a
do you-
hierarchy of safety too.
Hang on.
Obviously, people of color, disabled people, etc.
Ah yes, the hierarchy of society. What we in the business call progressive stack, which are like these pancakes of social justice wherein oppression is the syrup that you pour on top of the stack and it trickles down in varying amounts, being soaked up by the higher levels until you get to the bone-dry, cis-white, straight man cake at the bottom. And that is social justice. Kind of, in a nutshell. At least one aspect of it.
Murray, what do you think of that answer? How do you feel about this?
I guess this.
Now watch the man mansplain his man opinion on the answer to his man question. Heathen.
Two things. One is there's a lot of smashing and destroying.
Yes.
But what's the alternative? So
The alternative
that's
is a
one thing.
world where I'm not raped and murdered.
So, is that like an average Saturday for you, Mona? I mean, does it happen that often? Where you're raped and then murdered, right? I mean, I know you alleged that to have happened in 2011 when you were in Cairo covering protests and the police sexually assaulted you, leaving you with broken arms. But, I mean, you have immigrated to the U.S. since. Does that happen here?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's a good start. The other thing is too, if you think about bullying begets bullies. So violence begets violence.
He is absolutely right in quoting Martin Luther King here, because violence does emphatically result in more violence. The concept of positive punishment, wherein there is a positive contingency or a high probability of an adverse event that involves violence, is more likely to be modeled than by the victim. In children, witnessing violence and victimization prior to the age of 10 predicted delinquency and violent behavior. But of course, we're not talking about children, are we? We're talking about grown-ass adults who should know how to handle situations like an adult. As a very clear example of the exact type of escalation in political violence that I'm talking about, we can actually look to things like the French Revolution, which killed most of the privileged population and then imposed its own class of deciders and positions of power, another privileged class that then worked the wheel of oppression over time until another oppressor by the name of Napoleon decided to stop by for a spot of tea and maybe an invasion or two, or three, or several. Maybe an empire.
Is what I'm seeing. So
Well, let me bring Jess in on that about the, violence begets violence.
Well, it's interesting. I think if anyone's shocked by what Mona's suggesting, you just have to look back to history and a certain faction of the suffragettes in the early 20th century, they used violence. They thought what they were fighting was a civil war between the sexes.
Ah, yes. Acts of terrorism. Domestic terrorism. Don't we remember them fondly? Let's reminisce, shall we? Dublin, 1912, when suffragettes decided to set the Theatre Royal on fire during a packed lunchtime matinee. Ah, yes, good times. Scotland, 1913, 4 postmen were severely injured by phosphorus chemicals left in post boxes. And of course, we can't forget 1914. Bombs being placed in churches in Manchester as a means of enticing people to get women to vote or something. The connection is a little bit hairy for me, but, whatever works, I guess. But of course, these were all acts committed in the UK. The US suffrages movement apparently prided themselves on being non-violent, so supposedly the non-violent approach does work.
They smashed windows. That one suffragette actually went up to a young Winston Churchill in 1909 and whipped him with a horsewhip at a railway station. I mean, there was someone likes that.
Just one, though, which should be telling.
Winston Churchill did a lot of shitty things. That was, for a faction, a violent movement. And the only thing that stopped their militancy was World War I.
So what you're saying is that in order to stop Mona from enacting her complete genocide of the male population of the world, I need to assassinate the Archduke Franz Ferdinand to kickstart a world war. Seems easy.
If it hadn't been for World War I, there's no telling what might have happened because they were fighting for their lives.
And World War I was violence. World War I is violence by men against men.
Mona, hang on one sec.
Look at this majestic, vibrantly colored Egyptian Hitler, ladies and gentlemen. She cannot resist the urge to interrupt even her fellow womenfolk. Feminists, do you really want this as your face in the name of your male genocide? Be honest now. Come on.
It's never the ideal. It's never the first thing to go to. But, slave rebellions. I mean, there are many causes where people have resorted to violence as a way to finally break through and get heard and achieve what we need. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Remember, folks, these are all political activists with a goal, a single-minded, one-track orientation with very little deviation. Their entire careers, lives, are geared towards a single cause, apparently. Thus, they are all mentally incapable of viewing the world, conflict, politics, from a perspective of a non-agenda charged everyday layperson. The majority of the world's population, the majority of the populations within this horrendous patriarchy of ours, right? So they are perfectly alright with sacrificing any number of people for their cause, regardless of innocence, deservedness, so long as it's in the name of toppling the patriarchy. And you know what? Frankly, it's a good thing in this case that there is a gargantuan glass ceiling getting in the way of their ascent to the top, because they are radicalized and actually justifying gendered violence on national television like they're not just talking about justifying terrorism.
If I can just jump in, Mona. So I'm thinking, I just want to bring this conversation back to the land that we're on, Australia, whatever. We live in a colonial state, and I think for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we are living in a constant state of duress.
I'm sorry, is Australia still a colony? Let's find out. Okay, so short answer is no. The long answer is still no, but their head of state is somehow Queen Elizabeth II. I'm going to need an Aussie to explain that to me, but continue. Nayuka, I think her name is. I am interested in what your mustache has to say, which reminds me, I should probably shave mine. Yeah, we're getting a bit dangly here.
We experience violence from so many different types of systems. We experience it interpersonally. When you say violence begets violence, there's something kind of, it's almost sounding like it's like a level playing field.
That's not what he said. You know that's not what he said. You know that's not the implication. Please stop being disingenuous.
Which it's not. It's absolutely not. So
what it sounds like you're about to imply, and I honest to God hope you do not in fact imply this, is that violence is acceptable when the underdog partakes in it. However, in the instance where that role is reversed and the person who is enacting violence has a modicum of power, it's entirely and wholly unacceptable, which is just an asinine thing to say, when only minutes ago you were discussing the history of equality and civil rights.
I think if you're defending yourself, then I think I'm surprised. I wonder what our kind of tipping point in Australia is going to be when people are going to start burning stuff.
Let's not kid ourselves, ladies. Please. Australia is already burning perpetually. The world down under is Satan's butthole after a couple of ghost peppers, and I mean that in the nicest of ways.
I look forward to
it. My nation, on fire, burning to the ground in the name of feminisms. Ain't that hilarious?
Well, Mary's question was when is a better offer than assertiveness, strong arguments, and modelling the behaviour you expect of others.
I think, who's that bloody quote? Like appealing to your oppressor.
Asata Shakur. It's throughout history, no one has ever gotten their right or their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of their oppressor.
I'm wholly unconvinced that any of these women are currently being oppressed in such a dangerous way or threatening manner as their rhetoric has been implying this entire episode of ABC Q&A. You want to know how I know that? Because they're having this conversation on live fucking television. It's posted to both Twitter and to YouTube, and as far as I'm aware, none of them are arrested for this conversation. Or were arrested for this conversation. And it's still on Twitter and YouTube. So,
it's fascinating for me that men constantly ask, "Oh, you don't want to become like us, don't use violence."
Let's know, finish
so
your
I'm
point.
thinking about, in a colony. We live in a colony. Like we've tried for 230 plus years to appeal to the colonizers' morality, which just doesn't seem to exist.
You mean the not colony that you are? Literally, in what way are you propagating these claims? Like, what evidence are you going to cite that supports your nonsensical drivel?
So I think violence is okay, because if someone's trying to kill you, there's no amount of, oh, but I'm really clever.
Who is trying to kill you, Nayuka? Who?
I'm really articulate. No amount of that is going to save you. So let's burn stuff.
Riveting stuff, guys. I am glad a panel of radical feminists could confirm for us that violent terrorism is the answer to all of our gender equality problems. We're doomed. Yep.